Okay, welcome back to the NootroFit podcast. Today, our guest is David Grand, an American hailing from Stuttgart, doing a lot of cool stuff with physical therapy, online physical therapy, kinesiology. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. And he's running Grant's training systems. And he's going to tell us a little bit how we can use our physical body to de-stress, how to boost our immune system, and how just overall help ourselves with just taking a little bit of time out of your day to focus, to use some motion, use some stretching, and he does a lot of cool stuff on Insta, so definitely follow this guy if you want to just get a boost in your overall health. Good morning, David. Thanks for having me, thanks for joining us on the call today. It's an early morning. I know you're ready to jump in. I mean, I see your excitement and energy. How can people really use the momentum today to start focusing on their health and their bodies?
Man, I think it's a really interesting time. And we were speaking a little bit before the podcast about everything going on right now and a lot of people having home office and even myself, man, I recognized like 3 weeks into the program, or 3 weeks into the program, 3 weeks into the home office, that my mindset kind of started changing a bit. And I just, I'm being a physical therapist, running my own business, having interesting hours, being on Instagram. I'm pretty happy with what I do. But I even found myself really kind of thinking again about, what I can do differently, how I can kind of optimize my life. And ironically enough, I think it's really interesting how on my, sports medicine side, I find myself really dabbling in playing around with nutrition the most. So I think I think this podcast can really go easily in two directions. For me, obviously I've got my movement practice and I'm doing everything that I want to do because I'm the physical therapist. But and other people want to learn what I'm doing, of course, but also I am just always so impressed by how, for me, nutrition just really seems to be in my life right now the optimization key, if you will, not to sound like cheesy American, but it's really true. And just through intermittent fasting, eating less, the bulletproof coffee, if you want to call it that, I call it fat coffee, and just all these small things, I really kind of was able to focus on that more during this home office because I just, everybody had so much more time.
Well, I'm a little bit guilty. I used to work from home already for like months, years. I mean, this is nothing new for me. I used to go to the office every once in a while, but I completely agree with you. Like, a lot of people figured out they don't know how to manage their day, and their day is run by somebody else. So their nutritional pattern is kind of run by what's close to my office. What do I have time to make in the morning? Instead of really focusing and honing in on, this is what I want to eat. These are my values of my personal nutrition. And I'm really going to focus on making sure that my values are met every single day in terms of quality, in terms of timing, in terms of just looking at the aspect of nutrition that actually help you up your life, as you said. What are some basic things that you do that in your head everybody should look at or start following?
Well, I was lucky enough to meet, I don't know if you know Kelly Start, yeah, the Ready State or the Supper Leopard. I was pretty lucky to meet him and know him through some friends pretty early in his stage. And, when I was speaking with him, I really liked his approach. I think he's probably one of the top physios in the world now. And right away, I used to always get in trouble in my undergrad because my undergraduate degree, my sports medicine degree, because I always had kind of like a different way. I always just kind of thought that the body was quite clever, that it could heal itself, that we didn't really need all of this super expensive equipment and, I don't know, all these fancy exercises. And I thought the solution was always a little bit easier than everyone laid it out. And I remember I was speaking with him and I heard him say, yeah, we're not really supposed to sit for more than 30 minutes a day. That 30 minutes should be on the floor. And then from another physical therapist, just kind of tie these two together, because I always give Kelly Start credit for all three of them, but actually it was Kit McLeod. I forget this Australian guy's name. And he was like, we should change our position every 2 minutes. So after kind of having that conversation, I was trying to sit on the floor more. And I realized, I said, wow, that's really funny. And my motto basically became, we shouldn't sit for more than 30 minutes a day. The 30 minutes should be on the floor, and we should change our position every 2 minutes. And the reason I kind of put that together is, one, because it wasn't the same guy saying it. Two, when I started sitting on the floor, I realized, what do you think I did? I change my position on average about every 45 seconds. And so, when we sit on the floor, we sit like this, we sit this way, we sit on our knees, we put one leg out, we lean on one hand, we lean on the other. And then the minute we get in a chair, I always joke and say we sit in a horrible position for like 6 hours straight. So I think one of the first things people can do is recognize that in 2020, obviously, it's not possible to sit less than 30 minutes a day. And if you do it on the floor, imagine if a kid in school asked to sit on the floor, teacher's going to send him to the crazy house. That's the world we live in right now. So I think the main thing we can do, and this is like a little speech I always give, is, basically like the tiger in New York, right? I say, does a tiger belong in New York? Of course not. But the zoo has one. And for as much as we want to argue, of course, the tiger would be happier, living in Asia or Africa, wherever it comes from, but it's not. In the zoo, it's not like he's living in an apartment, right? They got the meat, they've got the environment set up by professionals. And the tiger basically is happy for this example, right? Well, we got to kind of recognize the same. We got to be like, all right, it sounds a bit depressing, but we're kind of a animal in the zoo too, if you will, right? Because we're not going to sit less than 30 minutes a day. It's not going to be on the floor. And changing our position every 2 minutes will be hard. So the thing is I always say, that's not the problem. Your body, your brain's clever, but it's not going to search for a solution until it knows there's a problem. So boom, we just found the problem. We sit too much and there's nothing we can do about it, in air quotes. But there is, because one more piece of the little science on top is we know that the body starts to adapt, the tissue starts to adapt to the position that it's in after 2 minutes. So if we're sitting in a poor position for more than 2 minutes, which if you drive to work, you already are, then we just need to understand that we need to undo that position. So the first tip with that little monologue before it, I would give is for people to, one, stop necessarily blaming themselves for their pain, because if you're sitting for more than 30 minutes a day, you're not on the floor and you're not changing position, i.e. school, university, or your job, that makes sense why you've got some pain, why your hips hurt, why your knees hurt, why your shoulder hurts. But now that you know the problem, it's your job to A, find the solution, and B, when you hear what that solution is, you have to take action and do it. So right there, tip number one would be start getting up, moving, and just understand that you're not supposed to be glued in a chair for 8 hours a day.
I'm sitting here guilty in my chair. I'm supposed to have a stand-up desk, but that's it. I think the point you touched on, I don't know who said this part, but I heard somebody say, we are basically domesticated humans. We were not the wild roaming free animals. We were the tiger in the prison. And I've seen a lot of people in this situation, like kind of compare what's going on with the world right now to domesticated humans, like the prison life that zoo animals live in. And I know nobody really likes it, but yeah, kids love to go there. But let's face it, if you're in a position that you have to be at home, or you're well, let's say, how different is the prison going from your house to your commute to your office? It's a similar box that you live in, because you're sitting, as you said, most of the time. And I was even amazed the other week. Some of my friends came over who were, your typical Westerner. They couldn't do an Asian squat. They just physically couldn't.
Yeah.
Because they're so not used to sitting on the floor. They're so not used to bending over to that extent, because all their life it's upright, sit in a somewhat comfortable chair. Maybe not all the ergonomics will be fit perfectly, but they don't reach that point where they actually go down. And as you said, if you there's little laptop stands that I've seen that you can move around as well. So if you're on the floor, you can actually use them to change a different position, change your position, because you're just going to feel uncomfortable. And I think that's actually a good tip, to just say, hey, make yourself uncomfortable. So you're going to start twisting and moving. And maybe all these fancy gaming chairs should be just thrown out of the door. I don't know. What's your take on how does somebody like reverse the damage that's been done?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, right? Because, the States is is notorious for being like, sitting is the new smoking. That was actually one of the name of Kelly Starrett's books. Sitting is the new smoking. Sitting is the new smoking. So then what do? Everybody stands up. And then they're like, I remember a year later, Wall Street Journal and your typical mainstream media, which is another interesting air quote term, which we can go into in a second. But they started saying, the statistics and the science behind the standing desks is not what we thought. And I died laughing because I went back again to my little three like rules. Don't sit for more than 30 minutes a day. Don't sit on the floor. Okay, well, boom, standing desk sit on the floor. Sorry. Standing desk takes care of the sitting thing. But what was rule number 3? Change your position every 2 minutes. Well, I'll keep my language G-rated here. But if you stand in a poor position, I'll swear one time and I'll say, if you stand like shit, of course, you're going to get some problems. And so if you're standing, for anyone watching the video, just kind of completely on one leg, hip popped out and in a poor position, if you're leaning over your desk, of course, you're going to have issues, because if you stand in a poor position, your body's going to kind of lock into that position for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long. And of course, you're going to have problems. So I think, it goes back to, we're 99% the same as the caveman and cavewoman. So that means we need to be moving. We need to be standing. I mean, that alone with just diet and mindset, this could be a 10-hour podcast on that topic alone. But the end of the day is we got to use our brain. It's not like we're like, okay, we're not supposed to sit for more than 30 minutes a day. Standing desk fixes everything. Boom, done. No, you got to use a little bit of mindfulness and common sense when you're doing these things. So I think standing is great, but we need to make sure that when we're standing, we're aware of the position that we are in. And by taking ownership and some mindfulness of our position, it's unbelievable how you just start realizing more things. Like, I sure eat fast. I mean, that sounds weird, but if you're just throwing food in your mouth, chewing super quick and swallowing, that's probably not good for you either. But if you're just going through your day brainlessly, not using, common sense is not always common practice. So if you're not paying attention to this stuff, obviously you don't realize it. Well, once you start saying, I'm going to stand today and I'm going to focus on how I stand. Next thing you know, your brain goes into that solution mode. And so it starts finding more problems. It's like, geez, Dave, you're standing terrible. Oh, well, I'll stand better. Oh, you know what? There's water over there. I haven't drinking any water. Wow, that's crazy. And it's crazy how, excuse me, once you start finding these solutions, it becomes like this kinetic effect of just finding problem after problem after problem. And through that, you just either, excuse me, you either say, okay, the one time I don't bring water, I actually need it here. You start realizing that as you start going through finding these problems, you have one of two options. You can just say, yeah, whatever, I'm just going to focus on this. Or you can say, okay, you know what? That's actually quite easy to fix. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And one of my ex-roommate, the French guy I spoke about, was a really high computer programmer, like a really high level computer programming guy, was speaking with Amazon and Alexa and really at a high level. And he came to me, not the healthiest, right? His spine was kind of twerked up. He really had kind of a funny gait. And I wasn't sure if maybe there was something wrong with his spine, if he was a bit handicapped, or if I was just sitting too much. And I remember about 3 months after living with him, he wrote a testimonial on my wall being like, this is insane. David basically didn't even work with me. I just started seeing him cook, started eating what he was eating, saw that he drank water. We had this conversation. And within 3 months, he went from eating, like cookies and crackers for a snack to only wanting like cheese and cashews. Sorry, 1 second. I got some water. I think you cursed me with the water thing. Jesus. I'll be right back.
I warned you in the morning. Don't worry. No worries.
Right,
I mean, the point you're making, I think it makes so much sense onto what everybody always says. Like, you're the combination of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. And usually a roommate is one of those persons who intricately influences you, even if you're not really directly paying attention. It just becomes something, your brain starts seeing it and it's like, maybe I should do that too. Or you see an aspiration because this person is fit or healthy or seems to be happy and it's like, I want to be like that too. My personal tip for people would be, okay, if you're wherever you are, I see a lot of people that get influenced by crappy influencers. Like people, they follow people who maybe look pretty or whatever they do, but they don't have a regiment where they say, okay, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that. Make sure that the people that you listen to, that you get influenced by, hold their personal health to a high standard, and not just be like, oh, I'm pretty, and then go after and eat McDonald's or eat crap
Yeah.
or do stuff that is not good for them. And you really want to make sure that that's part of your daily routine. If you see people that they're also helpful towards what you want to achieve.
Sure.
And I think I would love to take your point into that. Like he is a very specific job where he works behind a computer, which many people have to, but I think a lot of people aspire to do as well. Personally, myself too, I have issues with right arm because this one is the moneymaker. The other one pretty much does nothing.
Yeah.
How do you attack that? Like, how do you look at yourself? Do I need to go to somebody like you? Can I just observe myself in the mirror, or what would you start with if I were a cave dweller, let's just say?
Yeah, sure. And, you know, I think I worked with a tennis. So I worked a pretty high level of junior tennis. I was in Egypt with like this project with Africa with a kid that ended up making it to like 11 in the world as a junior. So I was traveling around the world with him. Dominic Thiem, I think, is now like top 5 in the world. We beat him 5 times in the junior tour. So really high level. I'm not a tennis player. I was a physio strength coach, actually doing both jobs behind that with the player. And sometimes you'd run into these Eastern European coaches, and they're hilarious. They're monsters. Like they look like they just walked off a SEAL team, but they're 99% of them are teddy bears. And one of these guys was hilarious. And we were a lot of times the tournaments, men's and women's, were put together. And this guy had a lot of female players. And God, what was his? Was it? I'm going blank on his name. Jake, I think it was. And he's like, he had a player that was a little bit overweight, and she needed a diet a little bit. And this funny story, we'll get to the point. And he was like, you know, I was in Egypt still, so I think this was like 2010. He said, you know, I talked to my player, and I don't understand. He's like, because she tells me, you know, Jake, I can't lose this weight. I'll drop the accent so everyone can understand me. She's like, I can't lose this weight. And he's like, well, you know what? No. She was like, I'm not winning the tournaments. And he's like, well, you know why you're not winning anymore? You need to look in the mirror and you need to be naked. Not with me in the room, but just go look in the mirror, take your clothes off. And you know what you're going to see staring back at you? A pig. And she looked at him and he was like, I don't know. I don't get it, man. She broke down in tears. And I was like, Jake, dude, you can't really tell a girl like 17 years old to look in the mirror and then see what stares back at her. And this was the point that he made. He said, yeah, but this is what I don't get. She turned to me and she said, what am I supposed to do? And he's like, what? Dude, this is 2000 and let's say 10. It might have been a little bit later. Google, YouTube, just write in the box, I want to lose weight. Weight loss exercise for tennis players, speed exercises for tennis players, diet for tennis players, or just leave the tennis out of it. And he said the fact that this girl didn't even think about doing something like that. He was like, I don't blame her, but where are we supposed to go from this direction? So, you know, it's a story I'll never forget because I think I would have approached it a little bit maybe nicer, but Eastern Europeans are hilarious in that sense. But the point is what can we do? There's a lot we can do. And I think, you know, the internet, Instagram, the Western Medical Society is going to somehow a lot of times make you think you need some super specialized, expensive approach, right? But you don't. I mean, my Instagram channel, I got a message the other day from some woman, I think in Brazil or something. She was like, man, your Instagram channel has taken me completely out of pain. That's awesome. She hasn't paid a dime, 1 cent to me. That's okay. If I wasn't okay with that, I wouldn't do my videos. If I wanted people to pay me whatever, I would do less videos. But I really think the body is that easy to fix. But the only way you're going to know what works and what doesn't work is if you do something. So the long point, or the point to this long monologue is, you know, basically what Jake was saying in 2010 was you need to just try. We got everything at our fingertips. And as my professor told me in undergrad one time, I was releasing somebody's hip and I was like pushing too lightly. And he patted me on the back and said, Dave, you know, the great thing about this job is you're not going to kill anybody. Well, you can take that also, it's not like I'm a brain surgeon, right? And if I sneeze, his brain's gone. Same thing with a tennis player, for example. Same thing with you. Same thing with me. Same thing with my mom. If she goes online and she's like, I need a knee stretch, and she finds a knee stretch, or my hip hurts, and she types in hip pain in YouTube and just starts trying things, the only thing she's going to get is feedback to her body. She's going to feel that feedback, and she's going to be able to iterate on whatever she did. So, I mean, good message or bad message, you wake up the next day, your hip hurts more, your hip hurts less. You didn't kill yourself. You don't need surgery because of this. But the only way you're going to learn how to be better is through playing around. I always say touching yourself and playing with yourself. I mean, it sounds terrible, but I mean, that's really what we need to do more of.
In either way you feel fit that matches what you want. I mean, that's a good advice. I think I heard some things that I like, yeah, this makes sense. I mean, if your coach tells you stuff that hurts, that might suck, but that's what you pay him for. You pay somebody to, overcome your blind spots.
Sure.
And a lot of people, this is my personal problem with a lot of people, is they don't want to hear the hurtful things. It's like, yeah, well, we touched on smoking, like sitting is the new smoking, but smoking is still the smoking. If somebody tells you should quit,
definitely,
you should take that advice and start doing it. If somebody tells you some deep, profound advice and you don't like it, but you know that this person does it from his heart because he wants to help you, take that advice and start doing it. Because if you want to grow, you need to start moving around. And I think similarly what you said, you need to start testing and really intricately feel inside your own body what's going on. What is going on for you if you do X, Y, Z? And this can be nutrition, this can be supplementation, this can be mindfulness training, relationship, touching yourself, whatever you want. I mean,
sure,
that depends on what you feel. And I think a lot of people have lost touch with, oh, I'm just going to follow somebody who says this, and if it works for them, it should work for me too. That's not the case. You have a unique body where you need to really feel, okay, if I do something, then how does that come back to me? How does that feel back to me? How does this feed actually come in my internal body? And then that's something you really need to hone in for yourself inside, like sit still and feel like, and my girlfriend is a yoga instructor, and she always says, like, your body knows more than you do, but you just don't listen.
Yep. Yeah, I think if I have a story I tell a lot of my clients, and an analogy, I'm like analogy man. And if I had to give one word, I would say simplicity. Yeah, and I think we've specialized so much, especially in medicine. My mom went to a physical therapist the other day. That was a manual physical therapist, and what? This is what we study. It's all physical therapy is manual. Well, yeah, a lot of physical therapists don't focus on the manual side anymore. That's like a carpenter saying he can't lay carpet. I mean, that's insane. But this is this is the world we live in right now. Now, obviously, with like surgery, when a guy's like, I'm a shoulder specialist, okay, I get it. That's fine. But we can't forget the entire body is connected. And when I say simplicity, I think a great example was when I was younger and I would do, I don't know, something where I had to focus. So let's say like math, I would really start to kind of tense up the shoulders. How you start carrying, you just kind of start, I don't know, you over focus and your neck gets tight and your shoulders get tight. And my mom would walk by and she'd be like, Dave, she'd tap me on the shoulder and she'd be like, relax. And I'd be like, oh yeah, okay. And I drop my shoulders. Well, next thing you know, I'm focusing again and shoulders start picking up. My neck starts getting tight and she tapped me again and say, yo, your shoulders. Okay, yeah, cool. Well, obviously what started to happen was I started going in that position and I felt this tension come. And then I reminded myself, oh yeah, hey, well, look, Dave, relax your shoulders. Well, that is probably right now, that just means nothing. Like, oh, okay, yeah, good job. You relax your shoulders. But let's look at the other side of things. What if my mom at dinner 4 hours later would be like, hey, Dave, when you were doing your math today, I noticed that you were tight in your shoulders. You should focus on relaxing that. I would either A, think she's crazy, or B, I'd say, okay, cool. I have no clue what you're talking about, but I'll give it a shot. So through that, I would then, what would happen 3 weeks later if I didn't fix my shoulder problem? I'd go to my mom, say, Mom, I have this neck pain and I'm starting to get headaches. And my mom, being a loving woman, would say, well, David, that's not good. Let's take you to a doctor. I'd go to the doctor. The doctor would find out that maybe I'm playing soccer, which as actually a story of my client last week. And he was having headaches and he was a soccer player. So what do you think the doctor told him to do? Oh, well, I'm sure when you're playing soccer, you're heading a soccer ball, right? Yeah. Oh, that's where your headache's coming from. Stop playing soccer. Oh, great. So now what is he doing? He's sitting even more, having tension in his neck. Well, what do you think happened? His headaches got worse. So when his headaches got worse and the doctor realized it didn't come from a soccer ball, they gave him a C scan. They gave him medication because, of course, it's something more serious. So by my mom telling me, yo, relax your shoulders, I relax them. I learn how to do it on my own. I relax them. My neck doesn't get tight. I don't complain to my mom. My mom doesn't make the doctor's appointment. The doctor doesn't tell me to stop exercising and take medicine. So right there, that's one facet of just the simplicity of how easy it is to stop this pain cycle before it even starts. But the other thing where it will be a little shameless shout out for physical therapy online and Instagram and my channel and all that jazz and everybody fixing themselves is, I said in that example, if my mom would have told me 3 hours later that my shoulders were tight and I should focus on relaxing them, I would have had no clue what she was talking about. But by her tapping me on the shoulder and saying, hey, look, relax, I learned how to feel that on my own. So the problem never came. Well, now let's translate that to physical therapy. You wake up and you're like, oh man, my lower back hurts. Well, good thing I've got my physical therapy appointment in 4 days. No, that 4 days, that doesn't do anything. You need something at that moment, because my theory is you might wake up and your back hurts. And let's say your right hip is tight because maybe you did some yoga the other day, or you ran, or a CrossFit class, or maybe you just slept wrong. Well, as that hip is tight, that's like my example earlier of my shoulders being tight, my mom just telling me to relax them. So if your hip is tight and you get up and you got a mobility ball or a foam roller or a Theragun or whatever, and you work on that area, then maybe that tension in the hip, just like the tension in my shoulders in my example, relaxes and releases, then your back pain maybe doesn't come. And then when it get maybe 4 hours later, it gets tight again, maybe a day later, whatever, it gets tight. And then you do the same thing. And you have this conversation with your body saying, hey, listen, man, every single time you make my hip tight, I'm going to undo it. It takes 5 minutes. I can do it anywhere. And I'll do it, as soon as I can when I feel the pain, because then the pain goes away. My theory is that sooner or later, the nervous system's going to say, all right, well, every single time we make David's hip tight, he undoes the tightness and brings it back to a neutral position. So I think the nervous system is just going to say, all right, well, then why are we making it tight? Boom, pain goes away and you don't have that tight hip issue anymore, or you have it much less. The lower back pain never comes. The doctor visit isn't needed. You stopping whatever you do, you don't have to, and you don't need the medicine that makes no sense because the pain never came. And it all started from just the idea of simplicity.
Yeah, simplicity, listening to your own body and just start taking action. As you mentioned earlier already, just take action, start doing it. I mean,
take action and touch yourself.
Sorry?
I said, take action and touch yourself.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of thing. That's also fun to do. I think it makes sense to just really look at the body and how it majestically can do it, but also make sure that that's a routine. I mean, don't let things fester. I think one of the points you really touched on, which makes sense maybe for other people to look into, is it's very hard to see, let's say, the label of the jar if you're inside the jar and you had your mom touching your shoulder and saying, hey, relax. But you can still do that mindfully if you have nobody in your home, or ask somebody, hey, just make sure that you put, you spar me if I do something wrong. If you see me doing something, make sure you tap me on the shoulder, make sure that I'm actually doing it. Or if you have nobody to actually do that, make sure you have little reminders that tell you, did you do your stretching? Did you actually, what's your pain level? Do I need to do something?
Yeah.
And stand still. I mean, if you have the time to actually do a couple of things to relieve the pain and not focus on medication, but focus on, not being reactive, but be proactive on actually fixing something, that's going to make a big difference in how you feel. Because the other day I went to a masseuse myself. My wife was like, you're a way friendlier person all of a sudden. And that would be my question for somebody who might not be known with a physical therapist, or what does it actually do? Uh, When should you visit somebody, or what can you do at home, and what should you be doing, or when should you meet a professional?
I mean, I think that's a good question. And I think, you said the one thing about if there's someone not around you to, tap on your shoulder and make you realize, that your position is poor or whatever, then you can kind of, try to do it on your own and, write notes and this and that. And I think a lot of times with the physical therapy end, I mean, I look at, trying to grow my company online and becoming more of an entrepreneur and doing online courses and reading business books. And what I've realized is how much of it all is really similar. If you don't have someone at your house, like my mom, to touch my shoulders and tell me to relax, what I start doing on my own is I just start thinking, I take a moment in the day. There's a physical therapy game where you can choose a color. And let's say you choose, like I always joke and say in Germany, choose blue because it's never a blue sky, because you want something you don't see all the time. And you can say, well, you know what? I'm going to check fill in the blank when I see the color blue. So, a lot of people have carpal tunnel, and that just comes from them standing like with a wrist, you would say extended position. My mom had that. So I told her, choose a color, mom. And when you see a color, see how you're standing. And quite often she would realize that she'd be leaning against a table, her hand in extension, and that was causing her carpal tunnel syndrome to get worse. So that is a game that I play with myself. I say, okay, well, you know what? Today I want to look at my posture. Today I want to test my breathing. Today I want to, okay, let's do the breathing one. I want to make sure my belly gets fat as the air goes in. I'm going to choose blue as the color. So then I might be chatting with you and I might look behind my computer and see blue. Well, then as I'm chatting, I'm just going to focus for a second and see, am I breathing with my chest or is my stomach actually getting fat? And if I'm breathing the wrong way, I don't get upset with myself. You need feedback to know what you got to fix. And then I say, okay, that's fine. And then I might say, well, then if I'm breathing wrong, how can I breathe right? Google, how can I breathe right? Maybe you get lucky and come across Wim Hof right away. Maybe you come across some terrible videos for the first 5, but either way, the research into how to change something is what we've all done before. Everybody has wanted to learn something, and everybody has been to at least some extent of school. Even if you dropped out in first grade, you still had kindergarten. And in kindergarten or in any education that we've had, just how to learn. So if you want to get better, if you're trying to get better at sales, what do? You read books on sales. You Google sales. Well, if your shoulder is hurting you, start Googling, what can I do to fix my shoulder? Yeah, of course, everything's on the internet, so it's going to be maybe a little bit hard to find the right stuff. But if you're a finance person, for example, and you want to read a finance book, what do? Do you just randomly type in finance, or would you ask a friend, hey, you know what, man, I'm in finance, you're in tax finance, what is a good author? And your friend would say, oh, you know what, I would look at blah, blah, blah. Well, do the same thing with your shoulder pain, with your lower back pain. If you say, you know what, I want to start breathing better, damn, but how would I even find a video on breathing? Oh, you know what, Lars' wife, I think she's a yoga instructor. Let me ask Lars if he knows of anybody. And then you say, you know what, Dave, I don't know anybody. Let me ask my wife. Or maybe I just say, Lars, man, can you ask your wife? So learning how to do these things on your own is the same way that we learn how to do everything. It's just for some reason, in our field, we're always so clever with asking the right people for the right resources, finding the right people to learn from. But then when we want to learn in something we don't have anything about, we seem to, again, common sense is not common practice, throw that methodology out and just randomly start flying with our fingers on Google, thinking that we're going to hit the best topic within, the first search. And then we say, okay, well, that didn't work. And then we stop.
And then the thing is, you should have listened. And this is a point I heard this earlier on. You mentioned already, go Google, go this and that. I get personally frustrated. I don't care if it's nutritional, supplementation, podcasting, writing, reading, business, finance, relationships, whatever you want to fix. There's people who have done it. And I've heard a great speaker explain society you live in right now. You might think, oh, there's just a tiny bit of knowledge, but we're basically standing on the shoulders of giants who have done years and years and decades and actually thousands of years of building a community where we are right now. The fact that we can easily Zoom that's just something that wasn't capable a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But you take it for granted and just like, oh, well, okay, that's just normal. No, that's not normal. You're standing on the shoulders of giants who build empires, creating and distributing and sharing knowledge through before the form of books, but now it's a little bit more interactive. The only problem I see people, they just think, I don't need to. Your whole life should revolve around learning whatever you want to learn every single day. And you have access to the Library of Babylonia. The internet knows everything. Privacy, yeah, okay, that's a little bit of touchy point, but the internet knows everything if you want to actually become better and up life. Who are some of the people that like, let's say now we're talking resources. How do we find the right resources? But as a physical therapist or somebody who loves movement and breathing, who should people start listening to? I heard Wim Hof come by. I heard a couple other guys that I didn't wrote down, but what's your favorites?
Yeah, that's a great transition to exactly where I was going, because I listened to a podcast of Dr. Matthew Walker, and it was with Joe Rogan. He did a sleep podcast. Yeah, exactly. And by that point, Joe Rogan was not nearly as famous as he was now. I mean, this was 3 years ago, maybe, when I started listening. So he was already very famous, but not to the extent where he was now. But through Joe Rogan, I basically got to know Wim Hof, Matthew Walker, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she's nutrition, Dr. Dom D'Agostino, he's the ketogenic diet, Chris Kresser, which is the functional medicine. He's actually a massage therapist, but he's just gone very deep in functional medicine. Through that, Laird Hamilton. Well, I wouldn't really say so. Through that, you've got the Laird Hamilton, the Kelly Starts, and the Brian McKenzie, kind of like the CrossFit, functional fitness, breathing, and all that. But what I realized was, so the joke with the Matthew Walker thing was, I wrote on the wall when I heard that podcast. I said, man, my clients think I'm a genius if they only knew I got 99% of my information from your show, meaning the Joe Rogan podcast. And it's just very funny. So I used to think, wow, people like me think I'm so intelligent because I have all of these great people that I follow, and how do I find them? I said, but ironically enough, I would give the credit to Joe Rogan because he's the one that really had all these people on his show. But in return, the reason Joe Rogan's over to have those people on his show is because he's California based. He's working at an extremely high level of sports, and his network is huge. So I think at the end of the day, everybody is standing on the shoulder of giants. So, I could look and be like, wow, man, Joe Rogan, that's the game changer. He's able to meet everybody. Kelly Stark, that guy's the game changer. He's able to see all this stuff. Yeah, of course they are, because their neural network of just contacts and people and information is, 5x or 10x or whatever ours is. And when they meet those people, Dr. Matthew Walker, for example, the sleep scientist, in his field, his network is going to be 10x what ours is. So I think the answer to that is you got to try to find one person you can trust. One person. And whatever that one person is, see who they trust. See who they turn to. If they have a podcast, even better, because then you can say, oh, great. Okay. They have a podcast. Who do they listen to? Now, I did a program with a guy named Brian Rose on the London Reel. Yeah. And I actually will give that guy a shout out because he's terrible. And I'm not one to really talk poorly about people, but I want to warn people. I think it's a bit well known now, but I did his business accelerator course a few years back, and I got all my money back from the bank because A, the course was terrible. B, he couldn't have broken more international law. And 3, it was nothing what he said. So do you get burnt? Of course you can. And that's why you need to be clever. Through that, in that course, I learned about Sam Ovens. His course was unbelievable, and it was half the price. So if I would have just done my homework and not followed somebody blind, I mean, I'm fortunate I got my money back from the Brian Rose program, but if not, it would have been a hard lesson to learn. So I think the way people can find people that they trust is by starting with one that they trust. And you will realize often, in my case, I'm like, oh, wow, Matthew Walker, Dr. Matthew Walker, that's really interesting. He seems like a cool guy. oh, wow, look at that. That's funny. He's also on the Dr. Rhonda Patrick podcast. And you start seeing these people kind of come together, and you realize that time and time again, what they say consistently makes sense. I implement what they say, it works. And through that, just like you were to choose a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a friend, a coworker, a flatmate, unless you have terrible skills at choosing the people that should be around you, you will realize that through some mistakes and through some guessing and through some luck, you will start to build a fantastic network of people that are professionals in their field that you can trust.
Yeah, and you get a group of trusted advisors. From the names that I heard, I wanna drop some stuff like Matthew Walker. Just Google that stuff and start sleeping already. Like,
Yeah.
I think similarly, what David already said is there's a lot of things that you can solve by just solving something else. Like, you might have 10 problems in terms of physical or maybe stuff stuck in your body. Fix one that is really the pile driver, and that's going to change everything in your life. Similarly, in business, sometimes it just takes one little thing. You'll be blown away by Matthew Walker in terms of, yes, you need to fucking focus on sleep. Please. Don't just say, oh, sleep is something that I do when I'm dead, or sleep is something that is the last thing that I'm going to do. No, sleep should be the most important thing of your day, if not the thing you love every single day. Rhonda Patrick, again, we were looking into getting some of her supplement lines. So Thorn, if you want to get these products in Europe, drop a comment below, because I've been trying to get our buying team to get them on. They've been having the products ready. We just need to get an approval and get it out. So if you want to have them, get them in, drop a comment, and we're going to start selling them as well. Laird Hamilton just dropped their products recently. They've been flying off the shelf, so there's a new batch coming in, I think, this week. But that's really high quality, clean nutrition, straight from this is the triple or 4-time big wave surfer of the world. This guy is epic. Even just him just learning how to be more wild, be more in your mind, do some breathing, focusing, and some low-key exercise is really interesting to look at. But again, I think your point is really well. Be sure that you make a curated group of advisors and not just follow anything. I mean, there's a lot of don't want to mention certain names that just really have bad information, and just they're not going to help you, and you can easily speed things up. And I think as well, now David dropped some really good names that you should be following. What made a big difference in my life, I listened to really smart people on podcasts like Joe Rogan and who else. They said, you should read this book. You should listen to this guy. You should. And I actually did it. And all of a sudden, my life went into a waterfall of adventure, basically. But a lot of people don't follow through. Similarly to the tips you gave in the beginning, how many people still remember? Can you repeat those 3 tips that you give so that people actually start taking action on them?
Yeah, definitely. That you shouldn't sit for more than 30 minutes a day. That 30 minutes should be on the floor, and you should change your position every 2 minutes. And that went into the fact that, your brain now knows the problem, so it can search for a solution.
So, and if they want to know more, I mean, I know that you're doing a lot of cool stuff on Insta, but you also have a course, whatever. Where should they go if they want to know more, learn a little bit more about you, about what you do? But also, it's not a blatant plug for David. He actually has a lot of free information out there on the specifics, like carpal tunnel I saw passing by, lower back pain. I'm pretty sure you have something for the most common problems that people have with their body. Where do we find you?
Yeah, so my Instagram handle is rehabgts. It's the only thing different from everything else. My company is Grant Training Systems, so www.granttrainingsystems.com. My YouTube channel, I'm picking back up again, is also Grant Training Systems. And the only different handle would be my Instagram, and I just have Rehab GTS because it's a little bit more catchy and easier for people to organically come across. And I've got the 2 things I really offer to kind of just get people in the door is I've got a free 45-minute consultation that you can sign up for either through my Instagram channel or on my website. And I've got, I call it the 30-day free Unbreakable Challenge. And it's basically just a course that I built that you have lifelong access to. And it kind of just introduces you to the direction of how I have just made multiple people become pain-free. And a lot of times the stories, the testimonials are just so bananas. I just send people to the testimonial site of my website, because from, fathers that were told they could never ski again, to beating their sons, their 12-year-old son 6 months later down the mountain, to a 50-plus-year-old woman saying she couldn't jog, to doing a triathlon, multiple surgeries saved. I mean, it just sounds like it sounds like I'm just, completely full of shit. So I just let people see the testimonials there. And, one thing for me is I always want an entry point for everyone. So I always say no barrier to entry. So, I've got the free content. I've got the content, everybody can afford. I've got the content some people can afford. And then I've got the really VIP stuff that, the people that really have the time, the finances, but need it appropriately for them, because that's how busy they are. I've got products for them. So there's literally something for everyone. And as long as you check it out, I think everyone can find a solution to become pain-free and stay that way.
Yeah, I think you should definitely just take the advice what he gave, look at the tips that he gave. Just, I'm going to start at least getting this ball. I'm probably redesign my office again to get a standing desk to actually stop dicking around with just sitting down all day. But I think one of the major points that you touched on is start feeling, start doing, start taking action.
Yeah.
There's a lot of videos that he has that you can just jump into, get your back, loosen up. And again, as I pointed out earlier already, if you solve one problem, you might solve a hell of a lot of other problems that are just linked to either having pain or just not being in your body well enough. Because if you have $1 million racehorse, take care of that $1 million racehorse. And what are you going to feed it? What you're going to feed it in your mind, in your body, in your terms of exercises and real exercises that you do. That's your body. That is $1 million racehorse, and you're not going to get another one. Spare parts are not available on Amazon, so you need to make sure that this little thing keeps on running as long as it can and as fit and as functional as it can. I want to thank you, David, for all the information that you gave, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to drop all your links below so people can find you. If more, just follow on Instagram, and otherwise, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep on upping your life to the next level. Thanks for watching. If you have any more last remarks, David, you want to drop people that I should have asked?
No, the only thing I would say is when I'm at my girlfriend's, she does not have a standing desk, and I literally put one of her, dining room chairs on her desk and my computer on that. So, I mean, there's no excuses. Yeah. You just gotta not care what other people might think, do what is best for you and get it done.
Not a good point. Don't care about what other people think. Just do it. I mean, what fits for you, fits for you. It doesn't have to fit for somebody else. It doesn't always have to match what other people think of you. Thanks for all the info, David.